Welcome to our FISI 121 community project, which will be an interview with Mr. Hawken Miller and Mrs. Deborah Miller by me, Anil Chaganti, Shruti Ramanand, and Leela Wong.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy, also known as DMD, is a devastating neuromuscular genetic disease that primarily affects young boys due to the lack of dystrophin, a protein found in the sarcolemma of the muscle membrane. Due to the rare and detrimental nature of this condition, many patients and their families look to find a sense of community and hope for a cure. Nonprofit organizations catering to DMD specifically are often the target of this search, and amongst these nonprofit organizations, Cure Duchenne stands out as one of the most well-known and most committed to its mission of empowering DMD patients and their families, and helping advance as well as accelerate research towards a potential cure. Cure Duchenne offers a vast number of services, including easier access for enrolling in clinical trials, catering to DMD, various events and seminars educating others about DMD, resources for navigating school and other areas of DMD, partnered clinics, physical therapists, and so much more. We are extremely fortunate to have had the chance to talk with one of the most prominent people from Cure Duchenne, who also has DMD himself, Mr. Hawken Miller. He is a recent USC graduate and is currently the content strategist for Cure Duchenne. We wanted to interview him after learning about his family's story in founding this incredible organization. Additionally, we are so privileged to also be joined by Mrs. Deborah Miller, the CEO and founder of Cure Duchenne, and also the mother of Mr. Hawken Miller. She founded this organization with her husband after her son's diagnosis. The purpose of this interview is to gain more information about both Hawken and Deborah Miller's incredible journeys in managing and researching DMD, while simultaneously founding a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization that is the face of supporting other individuals and families with DMD in a plethora of ways. We hope to gain more information and educate our audience accordingly, learning about the difficulties in dealing with the disability and how to overcome struggles and empower others along the way.
So just wanted to, before we started off, we just wanted to ask you both how you guys would like to be addressed, just so that we make sure we're professional and we're following like however you guys want to be respected.
Thank you for asking. Deborah will be fine.
Yeah, and Hawken's fine for me.
Awesome. So my name is Anil, and I'm joined with Shruti and Leela today, and we hope to speak with you about your journey as a family who's facing DMD and starting one of the largest nonprofit organizations for the cause. So just to kind of introduce ourselves, we're all third-year molecular cell and developmental biology majors at UCLA, and we're currently taking this course that's specifically designed to speak about disease mechanisms and therapies, all for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So our goal with this project is essentially to gain information, not only about like the firsthand information about like the disease, but also like information about how like you all started the nonprofit organization and how you got the information out there. And so yeah, thank you so much for offering your time. We really do appreciate it. And this is very valuable to all our, not just this class, but for our careers as well. And if you don't feel comfortable in answering any of the questions, please just feel free to vocalize that. We're not here to make you uncomfortable. We're just here to have a conversation and learn from you both.
I'm pretty sure you're not our toughest interviewers.
But yeah, we just wanted to give you guys the space to introduce yourself. And thank you so much once again.
I'm Deborah Miller, CEO, founder of Cure Duchenne, and the reason we started this organization is right below me on my screen.
Yeah, and I'm Hawken. I was diagnosed with Duchenne in about 2003 when I was almost 6 years old. And yeah, so my parents started this foundation, and I've just recently come on part-time to help with content, newsletters, blogs, that kind of thing.
I will say, first of all, it was 2002. I know you don't remember that, but Hawken also, even before he formally joined Cure Duchenne, has been a spokesperson and part of the organization for a long time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So with that, we'll be starting off the questions, and we'll let you know who we're asking the questions to. And some of them will be both, some of them will be for each of you. So first of all, to Hawken, what is it like to be like the spokesperson in the face of a well-known charity organization representing DMD, especially since like such a young age?
Yeah, I'm glad to be able to do it and to be a voice for a lot of the guys with Duchenne who maybe aren't as comfortable speaking publicly. But my perspective is, there's a lot of physical ways that I can't necessarily help other people, but if I can, provide that voice in a way that isn't necessarily physical, activity, it's nice to have a purpose in that way to go after.
And I'm sure you know that he did go to USC, right?
Yes,
But
I
I went
just didn't even talk about it. I just didn't even bring it up.
but I graduated from UCLA.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Okay. All right. So for our next question, for Deborah, like how did you channel like the diagnosis of DMD and the caregiver burden into something that is more related to advocacy that empowers like many families around the world today?
Gosh, so I certainly never intended on starting a nonprofit organization, but when Hawken was diagnosed, I knew we had to do something, and I knew that the rest of my life was going to be dedicated to try and help him and find something that would benefit him. And starting a nonprofit was a way to fund research. Out of that came meeting so many other boys and families and falling in love with them also. So it wasn't premeditated. It just came out of a mother's love for her son that got it started. And then it was understanding that there's a big world out there of need, and that we should. It was a calling. It just felt like my life's obligation to try and help not only my son but other families if we could.
Yeah, just to kind of like follow up for that question, like how did you address like how did you know where the needs and like the gaps were in terms of that DMD knowledge to kind of get out to those families?
So in the beginning, we were totally focused on research. All we could see at that point was that we wanted a cure. And so all of our fundraising efforts went into raising money for early stage research and funding either academic scientists or very, very small biotech companies, and helping them to get proof of concept with ideas that they had that might work in Duchenne, and providing them just the initial funding to do that first development plan to get an answer of whether there's a there. So that was the first 10 years were really focused strictly on research. And after that, we realized that drug development is really slow. It takes a long time, and that we needed to do something more to help the families. Hawken was really blessed early on from the day he was diagnosed that he had a physical therapist that worked with him and ended up dedicating her whole career to Duchenne and working with Cure Duchenne. And we had so many families around the country wanting to know how they could have a physical therapist like that, because so many PTs do damage to guys with Duchenne because they come out of PT school wanting to strengthen and rehab, and you can't do that. This is more about stretching and range of motion. So we sent our PT off on the road along with our scientists to go around the country and talk to families and healthcare providers and physical therapists. And we started a program called the Cure Duchenne Certified Physical Therapy Program to actually hold classes and teach physical therapists all over the country, and actually all over the world now, so that they could replicate our physical therapists and provide the best care. And so that's, it's always been just kind of identifying gaps. The more that we became knowledgeable about Duchenne, the more gaps we saw. And it's kind of blossomed from there, where we realized we needed an integrated biobank. And we founded a clinic in Dallas for underserved and underinsured kids in the area. And so I would love to say that I had a master plan in the beginning, but it's really been an evolution of just identifying gaps and putting together programs to solve those gaps.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing response. That is very, very meaningful, and it's amazing all that you guys have done for such a community that is otherwise underrepresented. So yeah, Deborah, I had another question for you. How did your mother, I believe her name was Marilyn, how did she play an integral role in supporting your family throughout the process of managing Cure Duchenne, and also the job you had before this, and also in terms of like raising Hawken?
Oh, you're gonna make me cry now. So my mom passed when Hawken was 11 years old, and I was an older mom, and so I was the youngest. So, and the other set of grandparents lived in Minnesota. So out of all the grandparents that Hawken had, my mom was the one that was closest to him. And I'm going to embarrass him, but she used to call him her little Hawky. And she absolutely doted on him. And so when Hawken was, and I was very close with my mom too, and to the point that I travel a lot. And even when I was younger, it was just a habit. The first person I would call when I got home was my mom. And so when Hawken was diagnosed with this, and it was a really dark period. My mom was there and very supportive. And what she told me is, you concentrate on Hawken, and I'll concentrate on you. And she said, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so take the long road, but just make sure, as you're taking care of Hawken, I'm going to make sure that you take care of yourself.
And I do want to add, like, I always love going over to her house because, I mean, she passed when I was pretty young, like 9 or 10, but I do remember she definitely spoiled me and was such a good, I guess, role model for both of us.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm also very close with my grandmother, but I can only imagine having that kind of support, especially in such like a dark period of time, must have been very life-changing and very helpful for you. So thank you for sharing. Yeah.
You guys did your research. You're like, as a journalist, I'm like impressed with these questions.
And so I have to say that it was very sudden. We had just about 10 days notice of her condition before she passed, and we all went to the home where the hospice where she was staying, and the three of us ended up going for dinner after that. And as we were driving home down Pacific Coast Highway, it's the weirdest thing. I've never seen this before. There were 2 palm trees, and the moon was sitting in between the palm trees, and it was enormous. I have never in my life seen a moon that big and clear. And it reminded me that before she passed, we called her Mumsy. I said, Mumsy, when you get to heaven, please give us a sign that you made it. And we saw that, and ever since then, we've called that the Mumsy moon. So when there's a full moon, we always think of Mumsy.
That's beautiful. Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hawken, I guess we had one more question for you. How we know that you studied in USC. How did your education impact you? How did you manage to get such a degree at like such a prestigious university, and also use your experiences and transfer that into building Cure du Chêne as an organization?
Yeah, I appreciate that you called us a prestigious university. I know that might have been hard for you to say, but anyway, yeah, no, I think that was really important for me. And so I think journalism is definitely a tough career, and I did it for a little bit, and now I'm kind of doing more, I guess, marketing in a way, but I would say that definitely prepared me for just communicating in general and writing, being able to write effectively. And I think also just being there on my own and kind of managing my care and physical therapy and schedule, I think that was also really important for my personal growth as well.
I had a quick follow-up, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Deborah, maybe you can answer this better. How was it like for you sending your son off to college with these kind of circumstances?
I thought that I was going to be terrified because of the circumstances. And I realized that, first of all, he was really lucky and that he got into a dorm with one of his best friends that he'd known since kindergarten. And so I knew that there were some people there that had his back. And he was pretty strong for having Duchenne. I mean, he was definitely a slow progressor. And I actually had a lot more peace than I thought I was going to, I tried to be a little bit more hovering, and he made it really clear that he was okay and that he didn't need his mom. And I was just blown away at how incredibly independent he became, to the point that and that he's always been very wise. He's always been very, very smart, but very wise. There's a difference between smart and wise, and I think he's both. But sometimes you don't find wisdom so much. Sorry, in college age kids. Sorry. He's much wiser than I was at that age, let me put it that way. And so I actually just felt really confident that he was going to let me know, or let us know, when he needed help, and that he would be able to advocate for himself. And I just was so impressed with how he went from living at home with his parents to being totally independent.
Hawken, I'm really glad that USC was a great time for you. I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to want to work in marketing and content creation?
Yeah, it's kind of been a progression. I always do have a heart for journalism, and I don't think I'm finished there necessarily. I think this is, a different season in life for me, but I think, how did I get into it? Yeah, so I started off actually in high school. I was invited to be part of, or actually, I applied to the publication staff, so that included the yearbook and the newspaper. So I worked on both of those, and I feel like I had a lot of great experience there. Then I interned at the Orange County Register, and that was a pretty cool experience as well. Because I started off with photography, that was kind of my thing, and then that became a little bit harder because of my condition. And so then I started writing more, being involved in the newspaper, became editor in chief there, then went to USC, went to the Daily Trojan, worked at the Media Center at Annenberg, the USC Annenberg, and it was kind of one of those things I really enjoyed it. And compared to other things that I had experienced, I was like, this makes the most sense for me right now. And so I kind of went full force into that, ended up at the Washington Post for an internship that lasted for 5 months. It was extended. And then I kind of, what was really enjoyable about that is I'm really into video games and esports, and I was able to, that was my beat at the Washington Post. And so to be able to be at that paper and also at the same time be covering something I really enjoyed was awesome. So, and then on top of that, I continued working for them on the side. I did a few productions for the Call of Duty League, which is awesome, great experience, and also streaming myself on Twitch. So I think all those kind of experiences pointed me to where I am now and why I like content creation.
Wow, I'm amazed at how your career in marketing developed from school.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Deborah, I had this next question for you. How have you used what you learned about disability accommodations in school systems to apply to the growth of Kyrgyzstan?
That's a really good question. I've brought people on who know how to do that, because it's not my area of expertise. So we have a division, if you call it, called Kyrgyzstan Cares. And it's the goal there is to provide support, resources, and connecting with the Dishin community. And so we do about 25, 30 events around the country every year, everything from small dinner meetings all the way up to a big national conference. And we have, we're actually looking for a leadership position for that team now, but we have a person who handles the operations and logistics for all the events. We have 2 physical therapists on staff to educate and help train. And then we also have 2 part-time community engagement managers, both of which they're moms with sons with Duchenne. And so I leave it up to those people who, especially the physical therapists who actually, especially Doug Levine, who lives in Austin, he actually works within the school system to do physical therapy. And so the moms that know a lot more about the IEPs and such. And then we also collaborate with another smaller organization that works with a lot of those issues.
Amazing. So that's a lot of definitely like a lot of different managing roles that you play. So that's amazing that you guys are able to really do that. But kind of like playing off onto the accommodations and school systems for both of you, have you noticed, like, I know you travel to several places for a lot of your conferences and a lot of different initiatives that Kyrgyzstan undertakes. Have you noticed like differences in accommodations in different locations, and how have you kind of like used what you've learned to kind of again like develop the growth of Kyrgyzstan in terms of accommodations in different like physical locations?
Yes, I mean our event team scours and scouts first all the locations, and we only go to places where it's really accessible, which are usually major cities. One initiative that we have sponsored and are really supportive of, it's called All Wheels Up. And Hawk, you've been involved in that, haven't you?
Yeah, so that's there's great, organizations that kind of focus more on the accessibility side of things. And one of them is All Wheels Up, and they're lobbying the FAA to eventually institute wheelchair spots for people to get on planes, because that's a huge hindrance for a lot of people with disabilities is air travel. And a lot of times chairs are damaged, it's hard to get transferred onto the plane. And so this organization is hoping to get, a wheelchair spot in the plane as there are in buses and trains and such. And kind of figuring out a universal tie-down system that'll work with all wheelchairs. And so that's exciting. And I think I've also been to a lot of different places, so I've seen accessibility like all over the world and even at USC. It's definitely a challenge. I think a lot of times you kind of have to be creative. Like, okay, so where's the back entrance to this building? Like, I need extra time here. How am I going to make this happen? And then, sometimes it's relying on other people and asking for them to help you through your situations. And so I think in that respect, I think being able to think creatively has helped a lot with, especially with growing Kyrgyzstan as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. So in terms of like the different arms that Kyrgyzstan has, how has it been like kind of like a follow-up, like how has it been mitigating like the challenges of managing like all the different arms of that Kyrgyzstan kind of has with like Kyrgyzstan Cares and all the different initiatives? Like what are some challenges you've faced, and how have you kind of combated them in developing the organization?
Just putting together the right leadership team is the challenge. And we fund research. We actually invest in research, and we have a venture philanthropy model. So we invest in companies, and we have Kyrgyzstan Link, which is the integrated biobank, Kyrgyzstan Link, or CARES. So we compete with pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies a lot with the people, that basically the talent. And so it's hard for a nonprofit to pay as much as a pharmaceutical company. So that definitely enters into the challenge. And plus, we're headquartered in Newport Beach, which adds another layer of challenge in terms of trying to keep costs down for payroll. But we now have a really great group of employees here. It's a really, really good team. And so over the years, we've been able to identify, with different business units, we've just been able to identify more how we're organizing the organization. And therefore, that was kind of the first step, and then finding the right person to lead those different business units. Before it was kind of everybody was doing everything. And so it's just taken a while to understand that we have distinct job functions here. And so we've got a great team now.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah, I know working with people is can be a challenge for some people, but it's definitely very rewarding. And I think that the community you guys have formed here is like one of the biggest parts and one of the most important things, especially for regarding this organization. So I had one follow-up question regarding like the community aspect. So on your guys' website, there is the Kyrgyzstan Champions page. And when I was looking through that page, like I found a lot of inspiring stories, and like despite all of you being united by one commonality being like you have a family who is that is affected by this devastating condition, But each and everyone's story ends up being so different. So how did you, like, what was it like meeting all these people, like these families? Like, what have you learned from each other despite there being so much being the same? There's also so much different, right? So could both of you maybe elaborate on that if you can?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much from the families, and we've taken the attitude really early on. We have a very strong faith, and certainly this is a devastating diagnosis, but we believe that it's being a victim wasn't going to help Hawken. And I always say that if being a victim would help Hawken, I would have been the best victim there ever was. But that wasn't going to help. And so we wanted to live our life as much as we could with as much love and joy. And my husband always says we're not going to let Duchenne rob joy out of our lives, and we haven't. And so we've really made a point of leading with that. If you come to our national conference, the first time we did a national conference, because there's been other Duchenne conferences, and they're very somber and big classroom style, and it's scientific presentation after scientific presentation. And I told my team when we started Futures, which is what we call it, I wanted it to be experiential. I want it to be where you walk in and there's lights and music and upbeat and positive messaging, and none of us know how long we're going to be here or when we could become disabled. And so the message there is for all of us to live our life to the fullest and to enjoy every day. And that doesn't mean just have fun. That also means living your life with a purpose. And I think Hawken, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I know for myself and my husband, having a sense of purpose, as much as we don't like Duchenne, is given us so much joy and made us just very positive. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, there is no question what I need to be doing that day. And so, yeah, we don't know what the future holds, and so we live it well.
That was so sweet, Deborah. Oh, sorry. Were you gonna?
I was gonna. I was. There's a verse in the Bible that says God works all things together for His good, and I think our life is just a testament and a testimony to that, because, yeah, Duchenne, like, I wouldn't want to have it, or I wouldn't want anyone I know to have it in a million years, but it's allowed us to have, I think, stronger connections with people than I think wouldn't have been possible if everything was fine and normal, quote unquote. And so, one family in particular, the Revels, really came on early and kind of supported what we were doing and had a similar outlook. And it's been amazing just to see their boys who are a few years younger than me grow up and be able to kind of walk them through, but also learn so much from them and how they handle their own adversity, because they have two boys with Duchenne, and that's a lot. And so families like that, and even getting to meet other guys with Duchenne more recently, and it's tough because it is a progressive disease, and I've lost some of my friends, and so that's always a challenge, but I'm glad to have been able to know them and just really connect over our shared situation. And so, there's a lot of challenges, but I think there's so much good in the end too.
Yes.
You may be our only favorite Trojan.
Hawken, as I was scrolling through your website, we all noticed that there was this app called Duchenne Exchange that connects people who are affected by Duchenne. And we found that very impressive. We've never seen anything like that. How have you played a role in Duchenne Exchange, being the general content strategist?
So, Mom, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so we are actually transitioning that into within cureduchenne.org. We realized that we're fighting an uphill battle with Facebook, which was like the de facto connecting point with the Duchenne community. And so we are keeping all of the really important parts like the resources, resource library, clinical trial finder, all the really important parts, but shying away a little bit from the social aspect just because it was a great idea, but it was, you know, Zuckerberg had us beat on the Cure to Shin or the Facebook page.
And I can add, like, not related to Duchenne Exchange, but Cure Duchenne in general. I've had the opportunity to write a few articles from my perspective, like personal articles, and then, you know, contribute to various blogs and such. And so that also reminds me that I need to update my personal website.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sorry.
that was all.
No, I was going to
Just
say, so Hawken in March, we were in Miami, and first night we were there, he fell and broke his leg and had to go immediately into surgery the next day and get a rod put in his femur. And he wrote about that after the fact and just the experience. And also about the fact that we have an emergency ID bracelet that really streamlined the process of getting him admitted and making sure that there were no conflicts with the medications that they were giving him. But that was really impactful. I think, first of all, he was vulnerable. He talked openly about it. And, so many Duchenne guys do break their legs. And the fact that he was able to get back up and be healed so quickly after that was very inspirational.
And
I can now say I've broken a bone.
Cross that
Oh,
off
boy.
the bucket list.
Yep.
So now we wanted to wrap things up here. I wanted to ask both of you, Hawken and Deborah, where do you foresee Cure Duchenne moving forward in the future?
I would say that our vision is our name, to cure Duchenne. And I see that we will cure Duchenne. We are very close. We're possibly going to have a gene therapy approved over the next couple of weeks. And I look at that as not the start, but definitely not the end. We're somewhere in the middle because this is right now at this point only going to be available for very young boys. There's a lot of patients who won't be able to participate because of neutralizing antibodies. It's not going to last forever, and therefore these patients can't be redosed because of the innate immune system that is going to be fighting this all the way for a second dose. And so there's just, I think where I would say is we're at a point where we know we can do it. We know we can cure this disease. We've come so far and we've actually seen that we can create something out of nothing, that we created dystrophin in a body where there was none, which is unbelievable. And so now we've got to perfect it. And so we're into the tweaking and perfecting stage that I think that we will have a cure for this disease. Hawk?
I think hopefully the goal is that we'll be in the foreseeable future going out of business because we do find a cure. That's the goal. That's always been the goal. But I also see us so close, and my mom used this analogy where we're climbing a mountain and we can see the summit, and we're gonna do everything we can to get there. I also see an opportunity for us to continue to reach more people with Duchenne. We were just talking about this earlier. There's maybe 2,000 families that so far we've reached with Duchenne, but there's potentially 8,000 more. And so it's finding those hidden diagnoses and families that need help, and not only meeting those needs, but just kind of guiding them through the process that we've gone through. And I think I've seen success just in my health and well-being.
Thank you so much for answering that. I just wanted to add like a quick follow-up, if that's okay. Just regarding like in terms of like making that information kind of digestible to several families, especially like I know you guys set up a clinic recently in Dallas for the underserved and everything. So how do you kind of overcome like these health education barriers? Personally, I'm really passionate about like health education, and I constantly think about like the different barriers. I know you visited like India recently too, so there were like a lot of language barriers there. So what is your general approach to kind of making not only the research aspect digestible, but the multifaceted, like the multidisciplinary care part of it accessible and digestible as well?
So we, we do workshops around the country, and our scientists, one of our scientists is always there, and they are really good at taking very complex scientific ideas and procedures and projects and really putting it into language that the families can understand, especially in this disease, because there's about 3,000 different mutations that you can have with Duchenne. And not every therapy or potential therapy is going to be appropriate for each individual. So helping, we do what we call the decision tree. So we work with the families to look at the landscape that's out there in terms of clinical trials and approved treatments, and walk them through based upon their son's age, mutation, risk level, and their, how they're doing, to kind of, we never tell them what to do, but we make sure that they have all the information at hand. And so that's really important, especially now that we do have a lot of clinical trials. I forgot the question.
Well, and addressing the barriers to other families, and to add onto that, to simplify for other families, and then working with other partners to help translate materials into Spanish is one of them. But obviously there's many other languages, so that's going to be an ongoing process to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that you think about like when you're making your content as like a content strategist and everything?
Well,
like how do you think of
I really should do it now that you mentioned it, but I think yeah, it's always important to think about that. But at the end of the day, I think we can only do so much, and I think we're doing a great job trying to reach as many people as we can, including our workshops and such around the world, really. So
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I know it can be difficult trying to reach as many people as you can, especially for a disease that's like as rare as DMD usually is. But yeah, it seems like you guys are definitely doing a great job, and it's definitely like seeing the size of this organization and how much it's grown, like it's truly inspiring. And yeah, thank you again for both of your guys' time. We learned so much from both of you. And yeah, like in this class, we mainly only learn about the mechanisms and like some of the therapies and like clinical trials. Like we focus a lot on that in this class, but hearing personal stories like yours and your mother's, like it's definitely an equally important component of learning about what it's like to have this kind of condition, to live with it. And yeah, I think there's a lot of underemphasis on patient stories in the world of medicine as a whole. So that's why it's been really inspirational and like a life-changing experience, especially for me to learn from both of you. So thank you all. Thank you both again for the time.
Right. Now that concludes our interview, and we will begin our reflection and major takeaways.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy affects 1 out of 35 male births in the world. Although this may be a small number, research for DMD still needs to be funded. As a charitable organization funding research, early diagnosis, and treatment access, Cure Duchenne has been around for over 20 years. Discovering how vital the drive was to start this organization was a valuable thing we learned during this interview. This interview with Deborah and Hawken Miller opened up the emotions and stresses behind the development of a well-known organization. We also learned about the difficult childhood of Hawken and how he was resilient and turned his talent and passion for photography into something bigger. A major takeaway from this is that having DMD requires a lot of resilience, perseverance, and empathy to be able to overcome the difficulties associated with the disease. It was an important message to learn about how he was able to take part in Cure Duchenne, making his talent in marketing more of an impactful role in supporting a community of patients with DMD everywhere. A disability is not always a barrier or a weakness, but can be used as a bridge and a source of strength to connect and support others along the way. With Deborah, we learned about the power of a parent's love and how it drives their ambition in supporting mothers going through similar difficulties around the world. It was inspiring to see them both persevere to curate a variety of different modalities of DMD care through their nonprofit organization, dealing with professional and personal challenges simultaneously. An organization ought to address multiple facets of care instead of just focusing on the one aspect, which was something that Care Duchenne did. Managing multiple facets of Care Duchenne requires organization and communication skills, while it is essential to connect with others on a deeper level. As both the faces of Care Duchenne, Deborah and Hawken are proud to carry on the organization and will continue to advocate for those with muscular dystrophy worldwide. Thank you for listening.